Well, I hope everybody's doing good this evening. Just doing my usual Friday show. This one might not be all that long because I'm getting ready to go to bed here pretty soon. Been up since early this morning, but yes, there's quite a bit to discuss, though, regardless, because of all the goings on in the recent days, I should say. So, yeah, there's definitely plenty going on to discuss, but I have limited battery, and I'm getting tired, so I'm just gonna make this a little shorter than normal. But sorry about that, disconnected. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to make this a little shorter than normal. Hey, into the fray, great to see you. Yeah, just going to go over the some of the highlights of the week and go into discussions on that and how it sort of relates to one of the predictions I'd made months ago, many months ago. Um, well, come to find out, the issue with what's been going on in Ukraine is definitely winding to a close, which, I'm starting to come to that conclusion that a lot of the psyops going on right now, and we all know what psyops are going on, psychological operations. I think that some of that is there to be a distraction from the long string of failures, one more to heap on the pile being Ukraine. Uh, Krematorsk and Slavyansk and Zaporozhye are basically all that stand in the way of a Russian victory in Ukraine, more or less, because once those areas have been taken, um, Western aid will be cut off. It's been said already, um, and not only will it be cut off, but the pocket will be fully enclosed. And by pocket, I mean all the fortifications that were built up for the last 8 years in that entire region since 2014. Remember, they had 8 years to build up those fortifications there, and they did. I mean, they're in deep. They're dug in deep. So I mean, this has been essentially a missile and artillery war, and it's been a limited incursion to boot. The Russians being outnumbered some 10 to 1 in the inside the borders of Ukraine itself. Having only sent in their roughly 70 or so battalions. That's about 63 to 65,000 troops against Ukraine's 650,000. So for them to have achieved the feat that they achieved was wow. I mean, it's monumental. It's monumental, really and truly. But of course, the propaganda organs have tried to spin it like that it was a full scale invasion, which it obviously was not due to the numbers involved and the limited aims and objectives. But regardless of how it's been spun, it is actually a phenomenal feat of success. It's been largely an artillery and missile conflict with very limited air power used. Um, Here and there, they've used a few strategic bombers, and there's been a couple tactical ground attack aircraft used in fighters, but that's it's been very limited. Considering the size of the Russian combat air forces, their combat air fleet of combat aircraft, they could have used substantially more. Had it been a full invasion, you'd have seen a lot more troops used and in a lot more different areas than what we've really seen with this much lower scale level of conflict that we've witnessed for these months. Um, Now, again, I did predict that it would be over sometime in July, but that there would be a margin of error. I didn't know how wide the margin of error could be. It could be a few weeks. I mean, yeah, it's definitely winding down though, and anything could happen at any time. Anything could have happened. But it's incredible. It's incredible that they've held out as long as they have, But one prediction I made all those months ago that's coming true this month, and it's we're seeing the very beginnings of it now, is the food and fuel collapse. And likely accompanying any food and fuel collapse is going to be a total collapse of the supply chain, like a final collapse, and also a collapse of the currency and the whole economy with it, because you have no supply chain, no economy, and the economy and the value of the currency are tied very much in tandem, close together, because you have the petrodollar really being the sole pillar that is holding everything up right now, meaning our way of life is really being held up by the petrodollar. Once that's gone, and once there's a food and fuel collapse, it's over. It's over. That's very real. That's a very real prospect. People can live in denial all they want to, and people are scared. I get it. I mean, nobody wants to, see everything that they knew, the whole world that they grew up knowing come to an end. But it's coming to an end whether we like it or we don't. And people are afraid of things that they don't understand. And, I get that, I do. But it's all coming to an end. And, we have to be ready and have to have our emergency food and water. And, you definitely want clean drinking water and food more than you want anything else. But you also have to have means by which to protect your property. You have to be able to defend your property, because there will be entire hordes, hordes, hordes of unprepared masses of people. And, the more you're surrounded by, the more of a predicament that you're potentially being in, when it all finally comes tumbling down, and it will. If you've all watched the documentary, the one I made, because that's really all my channel is. It's an educational channel. This is an educational channel only, because I'm a complete nerd. I put together hypothetical scenarios and documentaries. That's all I do. That's what I do. I'm a researcher. I am an amateur professional researcher, and I connect the dots, and I put together information. And I convey information through the guise of hypothetical situations, scenarios. I'm a big fan of the History Channel and other educational TV stations and documentary programs and things like that. So I've always been fond of those, and I like to consider myself the very low budget History Channel. That's all I am. I'm just a low budget version of the History Channel, And being that I'm a Iraq war veteran, combat veteran, I can tie in a lot of personal experience with, all the research I compile, and use it to benefit other people by teaching them about these different subject matter. So, that being said, again, back to what I was saying about the whole situation in Europe, that's all coming to an end as far as the black hole called Ukraine is concerned, where we have heaped a bunch of different types of weapon systems and ammunition for rockets, rocket artillery, anti-tank missiles of different varieties, most notorious being the Javelin, but also, we've sent TOW systems and other types of missile systems as well. But, we've sent them in great enough numbers to where it's become a hindrance on our country. It's hindered us. It's hindered our ability as a nation to be effective in our own defense. And also, so has the woke military, turning the whole military into a bunch of social justice warriors instead of real war fighters, real warriors. We've turned our military from a professional military into this joke, this unprofessional fighting force that has gone woke and all, social justice warrior like in their whole ways of thinking and doing things. That is not a force multiplier. That is a force hindrance. That is a force hindrance. They are hindering their abilities to conduct their job. They can't do their job and they can't do it effectively. And they're purging them. They've purged so many good, like our best people, not just good people, but our best people. I mean, they've gotten rid of those who wouldn't submit to the Mark of the Beast program. And, speaking of that, the guy that wants to consider himself the father of all of that, you would think that, at least if they're going to like go into his house, you would have thought that it would have been for something like uh, throwing his weight behind a program like that and boasting about something which has claimed many lives. I mean, it has, it really has. And you would have thought that that would have been what that was all about, but no. That all was totally staged. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, they're doing that because look, this guy, we're talking about somebody who was still in charge, and I was just watching Brian Young over there on it used to be called High Impact Flicks. I can't think of what the name of it is now, but he said it. He said it right. I mean, we're talking about the guy that he was still president, and he could have pardoned the people that went to that, but he didn't. He kicked them to the curb. Those were his supporters, right? Why didn't he get them out? I mean, why does he brag about a program that has eugenics behind it in mind? It just doesn't make sense. That see, if anything has caused a lot of people to get off of the left-right paradigm, it should have been all of that. It doesn't matter if it's a leftist or a right winger. They're all in it on the same team as far as their positions go. It's all artificial. It's an artificial construct. So for people to buy into the psyops is just beyond me. It's like, how could people not see through it all right now? I mean, I know plenty have, and that's a blessing. That's a blessing, because everybody should be focused on God and not on man and what men are doing. But we should all be focused on following Yeshua and not following a man. But there are still some people that are trapped in the whole political scene, and that's a very bad thing. It's a very dangerous thing, in this day and age, because people have got to learn that when you follow man, you're always going to be in for disappointments, because man will always fail you. But Yeshua, the Messiah, the one some call Jesus, but that's not his real name. His real Aramaic, his real Hebraic Aramaic name is Yeshua. But you can call him whatever you want to call him. I guess it's all on you. I mean, I'm sure he answers to either. But look, people have got to get off of the man-made paradigms, or else they're going to fall for everything that's coming. If you can't even see past the current paradigms, how are people going to not fall for the beast system when it comes about after World War III, after things are so horrible, after things become so detrimental, so there's famines, there's destruction, there's all sorts of problems. People are going to be looking for anything that tickles their ears, that sounds good to them, that sounds like it's a way out, and that's why so many are going to get caught up in even more lies, because they couldn't even see past the lies in the good times, so they're going to fall for the lies in the worst of times. So I said all that so I could say this, these false paradigms and psyops, though they have still tricked a lot of the people that are still in that cult mentality, whether it's whatever person that they follow, it doesn't even matter who it is. Some people are still trapped in that cult mindset, that cult mentality. They're basically, there's a lot of people that have gotten out of it. True. It's very true. A lot of people have seen through it and gotten out of it, but there's still plenty who have been, deceived, woefully deceived, even under the point we're at now. And that's what's very dangerous. People still can't see all of these things for what they truly are, that they're psychological operations made to anger people, made to, cause even more divisions. As if that wasn't already bad enough. They're just there to cause even more problems. And we don't need that right now. It's the real situation, as it exists in reality, is that what you have is an evil set of elites. Well, you have two, but I'm talking about the ones that control the political parasites here. You have an evil set of elites. Their whole mentality is to keep people divided, have people do the dirty lifting or the heavy lifting, the dirty work for them, and basically, wipe each other out. That's what they would like to see, but that's, not what people should do at all. People shouldn't fall for lies. People shouldn't fall for liars. These people have lied about everything. They've lied about all the wars to get us into wars that we had no business being in, including the one I was in. They lied about everything, and people still believe them. It's like people got off of one bandwagon with the fake Lyris, the Lyris. They got off one bandwagon with all of that, with all the masking and everything else. And then they jumped on another one with this whole support Ukraine garbage. We can't afford to be messing around in other parts of the world. We can't afford it. We can't. We have plenty of problems here at home that we're not addressing. And we all know it. We all know that. Everybody that listens to me knows all this already. I'm just reiterating it because I think it's worth mentioning after seeing what's been happening lately and seeing certain people parrot the same narratives, that are being said in the MSM and the mainstream media. It's deeply concerning. That means there's still people who ought to know better. They ought to know better, but they don't, because they're still buying into the hype, to the narratives, to the false paradigms. So it's going to basically come to a point, like in the hypothetical I made, the hypothetical documentary scenario, where it's all going to come to an end. It's going to collapse. And only then would there be some sort of a paradigm shift, as I've said before many times. I've showed exactly how that would look in that scenario. I showed it along different lines with the different factions. And I modeled it off of that documentary was modeled heavily off of what happened in Syria. Mostly. But I sprinkled in aspects of other internal conflicts. But that goes to show you just how fast things can change. You can have a paradigm shift that occurs on a dime. Like it'll seem so rapid that it'll totally flip the world upside down on its head compared to what's been known and, prior to that, previously. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I've conveyed in that work. And it's a very good documentary. I wish everybody would go and watch it because it's very educational. It can teach people a lot about how those things could look and would look in such a situation where you have a shift, where you have basically, like in Syria, you have these different factions all emerging, coming out of the woodwork, and revealing themselves and using, like they did in Syria, using the civil unrest that would occur from such a collapse as a screen, like a curtain, by which to camouflage their emergence onto the scene, like they're revealing of themselves. These little mini strongmen with their own little mini armies and factions and these groups. They would use such a thing as a massive, civil unrest type situation in the big cities and wherever it would occur as a screen by which they would emerge. And I showed how that worked with different ideological groups and different, even like a cult like group, like you had the Mormon State, which was like your fanatical religious kooks and crazies, and I had secular humanists which were ultranationalists also, like the NSRF, how they stood in for that type of ideology, and they all were divergent from other ideologies like that existed in the previous paradigm, but that had totally changed by the time that the collapse had occurred. Because you see, at the end of the day, when you start to take food and out of people's mouths, you take fuel out of their vehicles, people no longer can go to work, they can't live normal day-to-day lives, they can't feed their families. All that's going to do, the value of their money's gone too, by the way, from the financial collapse that'll come with it. And that'll have as much to do with the foreign actions of China and Russia as it would with the actions of, the economic collapse from the food and fuel causing the logistics to collapse. But you do all that, you take all that away from people become what? They become desperate. And when you have desperate people in humongous groups, they're all going to be clamoring for people that have solutions, which is why, like in Syria, you would have them all joining up with these different factions, because you would have them predisposed to some sort of ideological conviction that whatever they held to be true to themselves, I guess you could say it like that, but whatever they held to be true for themselves, you would have them going and clicking up into these different little factional groups, like what happened in Syria and other internal conflicts around the world in modern times. But that is exactly what I put into that documentary, because that's exactly how it happened in other parts of the world. We're certainly not exempt from a situation like that occurring, and the more people can know about these types of things, the better prepared for it they can be. They can sort of have an idea of how to prepare to be able to navigate dangerous situations like collapses and famines and war and pestilences that would result from things that could easily be prevented, because when you have a working grid, you have working sewage disposal systems, you have working trash removal systems, whether that's like your waste disposal facilities, or you have your garbage men that come and pick up the trash, or your recycling centers, what have you. When all of that stuff stops working, you're going to have people falling to the wayside, from whether that's from typhus, which comes from lice, which are carried on rats. Because remember, rodents are attracted to garbage. So if you're not disposing of your garbage, and most Americans are lazy, they're not going to know what to do with their trash. It's just going to pile up. Think about it. I'm right. I'm telling the truth. They're just going to let their garbage pile up. They're not going to know how to get rid of it and dispose of it. That's why I made a video to show people how you take care of things like that in a third world environment, whether that's a war zone like what we did in Iraq. See, when we were in Iraq, we burned our trash. We burned our garbage. We had burn pits where you burn your trash, or whether it's human waste because people aren't going to be able to flush their toilets. Well, that's a humongous issue too, because then if you're growing food, or if you're foraging for food, and you have waste seeping into the ground, then you get issues like cholera or dysentery. So you have to know how to get rid of waste, human waste. Otherwise, that can become very dangerous, because if it seeps into the ground, it can get into the groundwater, or it can get into food, or it can get into animals that could pass it on to people, especially if you don't cook it right. Like if you're a hunter, if you hunt your food, you're going to have to, one, make sure that there's no like if you like to eat deer meat, venison, you want to make sure that you're not eating a deer that has chronic wasting disease. I mean, there are ways to tell, but I mean, not always, though, not always. So you have to be really careful if you hunt your food, what you're hunting, and you also have to be careful how you cook your food. Food preparation is another important thing. You really, really want to roast your food well. I mean, especially if you're eating wild game, you want to roast your food really well. See, me, I like to fish. I enjoy fishing. Fishing is it's a good wholesome activity, and you can definitely accumulate a lot of food that way too. You can accumulate a lot of fish, to eat, and that's a good source of protein. It's filling if you catch a larger fish. Maybe catch a bass or something. A good sized bass, or whatever. If it's edible and you catch it, that can supply your protein needs in a day. So, me, I enjoy fishing. We have some nice lakes fairly close by, but there's all kinds of ways you can get food. And the bottom line is this: you don't want to be eating food that's been contaminated with wastewater. And fishing, you don't want to fish in a lake that's full of human shit and piss. So that's another thing, is waste disposal. Back to that. You need to be able to dispose properly of your waste. In a situation of total collapse, that's going to be more important than most people ever could know or think. And I've shown exactly how that should be done in that video that addresses the waste and garbage disposal. Because, again, most Americans are lazy, and they wouldn't even know what to do if nobody came to pick up their garbage, or if they couldn't recycle, or if they couldn't whatever. They're not going to know what to do about it. So people should really, really learn about ways to safely dispose of both garbage and waste. So there's that. Now, talking about the other things, we've seen that, in that documentary, there were people that were divergent from different aspects, I'll just say, of the pre-existing paradigm, meaning that they were one thing in the old paradigm, but when the collapse occurred and there was a new paradigm, they changed into something else because they were, one, very desperate because, they had just lost everything, chances are. They had no more food, no more fuel, no more jobs to go to, no nothing. And two, they realized by that point, they were forced into realizing that the old paradigm was nothing but a gigantic lie. The whole thing was a lie. So therefore, they had to find a new way. They had to find a way to, adapt to their current circumstances. And they had to find a new way of thinking, a new way of everything. And, regardless of how long that paradigm's going to last before we get invaded by China and Russia, because they will invade us, it's prophetic as much as it is lined up for that to happen in our real reality today. We will be invaded, but before that, there's definitely going to be a paradigm shift. Now, I'll give an example. Like in the documentary, in the hypothetical scenario documentary I made, let's talk about one faction, like the Northwestern Conservative Army. That was a faction that was in eastern Washington and eastern Oregon. So what happened was right before the collapse in that documentary, they were what you would have considered maybe, I don't know, I guess you could call it quote unquote Republicans, but what happened is when the collapse occurred, well, there was really no more semblance of a left-right paradigm left. And that is because the gloves came off and the regime showed its teeth, and it showed itself to be really like a totalitarian, kleptocratic, whatever it was by that point. So the people up there basically had to find a new way of values, like a value system. Like, what would they cling to? What would they consider themselves at that point? Well, being that they already had like conservative based family values and, conservative views on like just different issues, they then dubbed themselves the Northwest Conservative Army because they were considered like traditional conservatives. They weren't like Republicans anymore. But they were conservative minded. We'll just say. So they like, as far as their family values, their economic beliefs, all that different stuff. So they called themselves that. Then say you had like another faction. You had like basically like the Maine militia, in Maine, in the state of Maine. They were more like your traditional libertarians before, the whole collapse occurred. So they kind of continued along similar lines by that point. And then, you had other factions going different ways too, and then you had like the Mormon state, who were like your cultish, like religious kooks who basically the most extreme fringes. I mean, and when I say fringes, I mean the absolute most kooky, crazy, cult-like outliers of the Mormon belief system. They took control of the entire Mormon church and the whole state of Utah and adjacent areas in general. But they were cultish, kooky outliers. Like, they were like a fringe brand of it, and they took control of the mainstream of it. Now, that type of thing can easily happen too. We've seen things like that happen even around the world in other nations. That type of thing is a very realistic sort of a way to convey that concept. So of a kooky fringe organization taking over the mainstream of an organization, like that type of thing has happened all throughout history around the world. Now, even if you look at like a place like Afghanistan, for instance, in Afghanistan, I told you all about, Mullah Omar and his and where he came from and how he aspired and seized power. Well, he was essentially like a nobody. I mean, he was a nobody, but he was on the fringes. Like, he created his own religious school by which he basically created the tally to the ban, and he took over Afghanistan. Like, that's one example of a fringe cult group or a cult-like organization taking control of a mainstream. Because remember, of course, in that side of the world, they're what? They're Muslims. So, he basically created a fringe sect of Islam, and he took over in Afghanistan. So there's a lot of parallels between what happened in other parts of the world and what happened in the documentary series with different groups. So that was all there just to convey those concepts of what such a thing would even look like and how it would progress from the very beginning, which was the collapse, all the way to the very end, which was the foreign Chinese and Russian invasion at the very end of the documentary series. So that conveyed a lot of different types of educational, just different topics and everything else as it relates to such types of situations. Really and truly, I've made so many documentaries, I mean, as far as it relates to these different topics, I could have been a professor on it by this point. I could have taught this subject in a university. But I'm that much of a nerd. I'm that much of a nerd. I mean, this stuff is fascinating to me. But it's reality too, because we all know that there is going to be a collapse and that everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. And we edge nearer and nearer to that day every day. We see it happening all around us. There's all sorts of examples of overreach, and there's examples of all the false flagaroonies and cheese and all the you know what I mean by that, and all the other things. So it's all like it was at the very beginning of that documentary. It's all like it was at the very beginning of that. Even just when they threatened to get rid of 260,000 guardsmen, they threatened to get rid of 260,000 guardsmen because they wouldn't submit and take that evil, diabolical poison. So, because they won't take the poison, they're being threatened to be kicked out. And like I said in the other live, what was it, last Friday? I said, that's probably the only part of our military we even have left that has any sort of integrity or values ascribed to it whatsoever at all. Because at this point, you see, when I was in the Army, we used to look down on the Guard and the reservists because we looked at them like they were part-timers. We looked at them like they were part-timers, like they were like, just they weren't the cream of the crop. They weren't hardcore, they were weekend warriors, but we were the cream of the crop as the active duty. We were like the first to go. We were like the front line type of soldiers, The Guard and reservists we looked at as like part-timers, like they were like half civilian, half military, like we didn't even give them that full respect of being like we were, even though they were, they did step up. They did do a great job, when they were called upon. They did do a great job. I'm not bashing the Guard or the reserves at all, and not at all, but what I'm saying is, as active duty, we had like a certain arrogance about us because we felt that we were like the best of the best. And, back then we were. Back then we were. We were the most professional because we were full time. That was what we ate, we slept, and we shit our job, literally, because we were full time. We were full time Army. Full time Army. We were always training. We were always getting ready to go overseas. That's all we did. That's all we cared about. Nowadays, man, they don't train like they used to, if at all. I don't even know what they're doing now that they went, all woke and all social justice PowerPoint warrior, and they're running out of critical training ammunition for certain systems. They're also, at the point where their physical standards have been extremely lowered. We can't fight enemies in the current condition that we're in as a nation. We cannot fight any real enemy like in a state like that, in a condition like that. And they're at the point where they're purging the best people. They're getting rid of the best people, and they're replacing them with this new generation of these wokesters and these Call of Duty wannabes that think that they're going to be some kind of video game Call of Duty character or something. I don't even know. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But that's what they're trying to replace the old professional people with. The people that would have been there to give our military some sort of backbone. They're getting rid of them. They're axing them. They're purging them. And it's hollowed out, it's depleted, it's woke. It's not going to be able to stand its own against anybody. And even in the documentary I made, they all fractured. They fractured into multiple pieces. They went to different factions, and they took everything they had with them. They took all their vehicles, their supplies, whatever they had, they went with it. And they went to different factions. Of course, you had the woke, the hardcore woke military staying loyal and true to the regime, while you had the Free American Army faction largely being made up of reserves and guardmen, and you had also the other factions getting a good substantial chunk of the military forces. Like you had Texas getting a good amount itself, and then you had the NSRF got some, and Florida got a little bit, and then you had the rest of the small factions. There were like four small ones. They got what was left, basically. Uh, and really and truly, the way it's already looking in our real reality today, it looks like it's all set up for that all to come true. It really does. It really, really does. It really looks like that. Seriously looks like that about now. About now, with what they're trying to do, getting rid of our best people, it looks like they're setting up for that exact type of thing to occur. That 260,000 that they're talking about booting out for not taking the poison, who knows? That could be your Free American Army type of faction. Who even knows? Who knows? I don't know because I can't tell the future, but I can tell you that I have a lot of insights on the future, and I've done enough research to know that what I've researched and put together, I was able to piece together the closest rendition of the future that people will ever see, ever. And that's, it really is. It's because I've taken so much different information, I've overlaid it, I've connected it, and I've used it to convey these concepts. Like I've said before, my documentary, of course, obviously, it's not going to be like verbatim. Like you're not going to have like the literal factions by the literal names and the literal people that are running them or anything. But you're going to have it close enough to it. Like the concepts are all going to be there. It's going to be the same types of concepts, just different people, different names, but it's the same exact concepts that were highlighted in that educational documentary. So as far as the invasion stuff, that's as close to that as anybody's ever going to see. Because I took the literal Chinese doctrines, the Russian and Chinese hybrid war, fourth generation warfare doctrines, and I plugged in their real units, real equipment, real everything to make those. So that also is another rendition of the future that's as close to the reality as anybody's ever going to see. Like I said before about that. Now, you might have different units in different places, but they're going to be doing much the same things, the same exact things that I portrayed in my work. They're going to be going for the cities first, the big cities, the installations, the just whatever that they perceive is their primary and secondary objectives. They're going to go for that first. Their Trojans are going to set up those logistical supply points for the externals and for themselves, of course. And they're going to just start capturing everything on a primary, secondary basis first. Then they'll go for tertiary zones once they fan out after capturing their primary and secondary objectives. So again, there's those concepts. Once again, that's about as close to the real reality as you're ever going to see in a hypothetical scenario documentary series. It's an educational series, the purpose of which is so that nobody will be blindsided by any of this stuff when it begins to happen in the real world that we live in. So, and it is going to happen. Anybody that denies that that's going to happen is out of their mind insane, or they're just blind and they refuse to see the truth, or they don't know the truth because they never had the truth. They're just, they're living in their little bubbles and they're comfortably numb. They're numb to everything. They just don't want to acknowledge it. The whole world's so upside down right now. It's so upside down, turned inside out. People want to believe lies, and they're scared of the truth. They look at the truth as if it's crazy. It's just, I don't even understand people. It's well, I mean, I do understand it, but it's so asinine because I think what happened is I think a lot of people have taken a certain thing in the arm and that has corroded their brain or their ability to see a lot of these things. So they hold on to psychopathy, their psychotic thoughts, and and if you're like well adjusted, like Brian said in his video, if you're well adjusted, or if you're knowledgeable, or if you're intelligent and you do research, you're looked at as the crazy one. Yeah, yeah. It seems about right. Seems about right in this day and age. But I've done basically all I could do for people. I've tried to help people. I've legitimately tried to help people. I've legitimately tried to help people with everything I've done. And yeah, I'll continue my audio book, but after that, I'm about done with YouTube. I'll just leave the work up for people that want to use it for their own benefit, their own knowledge. But go into the chat, see what everybody's saying. I'm just glad I ended up coming on before I got too tired and didn't even want to do this. So, see what everybody's saying. Yeah, Angry Scandinavian and King Tuna and Jeffrey Bernard and Brandy Mayberry. Yeah, or Brandy Maytoby, I'm sorry. And Living for Jesus and who else is in here? Fear No Man, hey. Yeah, Fear No Man, you're funny, man. Yeah. Yeah, the Mormons are all about their magic temple garments. Yeah, Josiah, he probably never changed his. Supreme Acolyte Josiah in the scenario. Oh boy, who else is in here? Guero and Kathy and Matt Always Learning. Well, it's great to see everybody. Oh yeah, Brandy, it's no problem. It's no problem. Oh, hey, Brogan, see you in here too. I called Gems. Hey, good to see you. Hope you're doing all right, Casey. But yeah, see everybody's doing good. It looks like. Yeah, everybody thinks that they're gonna, get raptured out, but that's ludicrous. That's utterly ludicrous. They're not special. People think they're special when other people in other parts of the world have to endure warfare, and they have to endure famines, and they have to endure all this other stuff, but they're special somehow and they're going to get taken out of here. No, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. No, we're all going to be very much here to see what's coming, unfortunately. But we're all going to see what's coming, I mean, what does it matter anyway? What does it matter if if you're taken out, or if you stay and just perish somehow? What does it matter? As long as you believe in Yeshua Messiah, then you're going to heaven regardless, right? So what does it even matter? I don't know why people make such a big deal about this whole rapture thing. They're never going to know when the rapture would be anyway. I mean, people that keep setting rapture dates are false prophets. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't care what excuse somebody makes, they're never going to know, But we know that Yeshua Messiah comes back one time. He comes back one time. He comes back at Armageddon. That, and the whole purpose of the rapture is to change all of those who are still left when he returns, that are still living when he returns. Everybody else, I mean, little by little, everybody's going to end up biting the dust little by little, because, there's going to be so many famines and wars and pestilences and everything it says in the Bible, that it's all going to come to pass, and that's what it says is going to happen. Another thing too, the elect are mentioned as being here in Revelation. The elect are mentioned as being here. So if the elect are here, then it would stand to reason that the elect would be raptured. They're the elect, right? I mean, they would be raptured, right? Well, no, if it says they're here, then that means everybody's going to be here for it. So, it says that there's going to be a strong delusion that the elect would even be deceived were it possible. And that means that the elect are here. They haven't been raptured, they're here. So if the elect are here and the elect are like the cream of the crop of the believers, then that means that everybody's going to be here. So nobody's escaping what's coming. People want their ears tickled. They want to believe that that they somehow get a free pass and they don't have to do anything, and that somebody's going to do everything for them. And no, it don't work like that. God wants everybody to do what they're supposed to do for themselves, and He will meet you halfway. That's a theme all throughout the Bible. God expects things of people. He doesn't just want you to sit on your ass and just do nothing. You can't seriously expect God to do everything for you. You have to get up and do certain things. It's been a theme all throughout the Bible. Read every biblical story, and that's the theme in every single solitary story. No, I mean, King David, he had to take care of Goliath. He didn't just stand there and say, "Oh God, knock him down for me." No, he didn't. No. Or Joseph, he didn't say, "God, put all the grain and store away all the grain for us." No, he had to go and harvest the grain with the others. They all had to harvest the grain and store it away. Or same with Noah. He had to build the ark. God shut the door, but he had to build the ark. He didn't say, God, will you build the ark for me? I just don't want to do it. Can you do it, please? No, he never. No, it don't work like that, folks. Don't work like that. We're going to be here. And the other thing is too, is that, like I said in the other ones, I'm always avidly, pro self-defense. Not aggression, because I've never done anything wrong to nobody, and I'm not going to. I would never ever harm anybody or go after anybody. I mean, self-defense is a whole different thing. If somebody goes after you and they're evil, you have a God-given right to defend yourself. Period. God-given right. But, people have been lied to by false religious systems that they should lay down and just take whatever evil does to them, and that's wrong. That's wrong. Everybody has a God-given right to defend themselves. That's a theme throughout the Bible too. And so, obviously not everybody is physically able to do that, but for able-bodied men, nah, you ain't got no excuse. It's just better to do that than to be a doormat for evil. It's always better to defend yourself than to be a doormat for evil. So, everybody knows how strongly I feel about that. Everybody does. If you've stuck with me this long, if you've stuck with me for the last couple years, you all already know how strongly I feel about that. Self-defense is all throughout the Bible, and it is a God-ordained, God-given right. Not naked aggression, but self-defense, meaning if somebody attacks you first, if they attack you first, you have the right to defend yourself. Don't ever be an aggressor. Never, ever be an aggressor. Don't ever threaten anybody. Don't ever be an aggressor. But if somebody attacks you first, then you're well within your rights to defend yourself. You're well within your right to defend yourself. So, that is all about the moral high ground. Like I said in the other live, it's all about maintaining the moral high ground. You maintain the moral high ground by not doing anything wrong. And if you're not the aggressor, then you've done nothing wrong to anyone. So in self-defense, you are simply maintaining the moral high ground, So there's that. But I wanted to get on here and have a short little live show tonight. Normally my Friday shows run a bit longer, but I had to sort of cut this one short because I'm down to 2% battery already. So I enjoyed it with everybody, and I'm glad y'all came. I love all y'all. Y'all have a great night. I'm glad to have seen everybody. Yeah, don't ever go look for trouble. Exactly, angry Scandinavian. Don't ever look for trouble, but if trouble finds you, be sure to shut it down. Thank you, Into the Fray. And thank you, King Tuner. Yeah, you all be blessed. It was a good show. Y'all have a good night. About take my ass to bed.